students of Single Institute, and we have an program named Entrepreneurship Development Program in our syllabus. And since you are the youngest entrepreneur of Solapur, we are here to talk you about the pros, cons, and tips related to the program.
Yeah.
And if with your permission, we would like to start the interview.
Please.
Sir, it is expected to have a very good and enjoying child life as a child.
Mhm.
So please, would you like to elaborate about your childhood?
Sure. So I'm born and brought up in Solapur. Very much lived here till I was about 18 years old. So the good part is ki Precision Camshaft was started by my father when I was about 2 or 3 years old. So after I was born. So in the first 15-16 years of my life, मी हा पूर्ण त्यांचा trajectory kind of first hand पाहिलेला आहे, right? Because it started off as a स्मॉल कंपनी 1000 स्क्वेअर फूटची शेडमध्ये 5 लोक आणि 600 कॅम्पशाफ्ट पर मंथ असं करत होते माझे वडील. आणि फ्रॉम देअर वी हॅव कम अ लॉंग वे. आणि सो आय हॅव बीन व्हेरी फॉर्च्युनेट की मला हे सगळं जर्नी बघायला मिळालं इन अ वे. आणि दॅट हॅज इन मेनी वेज इन्स्पायर्ड मी टू बी पार्ट ऑफ दिस कंपनी, टू ग्रो द कंपनी इवन फर्दर, अँड फॉर अ बिग रिझन फॉर मी टू काइंड ऑफ कम बॅक टू इंडिया, कम बॅक टू सोलापूर आफ्टर studying in the US and working there for almost 10 years. So,
Sir, but if your father wouldn't have established this company, let's go in the another perspective.
yeah.
If he wouldn't have done it, what would have you done? Like, do you have any other interests or something like that?
No, see, I think entrepreneurship has been part of my family for many generations. So my great grandfather was an entrepreneur. My grandfather was an entrepreneur. Both on my mother's side and my father's side. Actually, my mother's side, my grandparents are doctors, but they started their own hospital, which is a business itself, right? They are entrepreneurs also. So I've seen this throughout. If this company was not there, if the foundation was not there, I would have perhaps, I don't know, perhaps worked at a bigger organization for a longer period of time than I actually did. मी फॉर एक्झाम्पल कमिन्समध्ये त्यांच्या हेडक्वार्टर्समध्ये अमेरिकेत 2-2.5 वर्ष काम केले आणि मग जर्मनीत एका इन्व्हेस्टमेंट बँकमध्ये 6 महिने. दॅट माइट हॅव बीन अ लॉंगर पिरियड ऑफ टाइम. आणि आय थिंक based on the inspirations that I've had from my grandparents, from my parents, perhaps wanted to start something of my own at a later point of my life, after having a lot of experience, after having a lot of education.
So you mean to say is you prefer business than jobs?
I would think so.
Yes.
I think so.
And
yes.
Is that your message to all the students right now, the young generation?
No, I think it's very easy to say ki it's one way or the other. Obviously, everybody has a different way of looking at things. I think what comes with entrepreneurship, what comes with starting a business or being part of a business is very different from a typical job, right? When you're doing a business, it doesn't stop 9 to 5. After म्हणजे 5 वाजल्याच्या नंतर अजून संपलं असं नाहीये. The amount of risk that you are willing to take as a business owner, because everything that you do in your life is kind of dependent on it, right? म्हणजे तुमचं income तर yes for sure, but how much money you have put into the business, the amount of people that depend on you because of the way you run the business. So all of that kind of has to play in your mind somewhere ki am I ready to take this kind of a risk? And फक्त business करायचा म्हणून business I think is not absolutely appropriate, because I think you have to be really passionate about what you do. If you just say ki मला एक हे नवीन चालू करायचं आहे because चालू करायचं आहे, better to do it than a job, whereas I think we are all here extremely passionate about what we do. My father will always say that we live, eat, breathe, sleep camshafts. That's what we do. And if it weren't like that, it would not be the way it is today. The way you see the company, the way we have expanded globally. So they are here. But yes, for sure, I think I would always tell new students or people like you who are in college right now to consider entrepreneurship as a career choice, because it is very fulfilling in many ways. Everything is kind of your ownership, right? All the highs and lows are all belonging to you. There is no way of saying ki ही चूक झाली पण ही माझी नाहीये आणि let's pass it on. The buck stops at your table असं म्हणतात, right? In as a business owner, a lot of things can go wrong and ends up with you, and a lot of things can go right and it ends up with you. So I think that, and I think one of the most important things that college students like you, I think, should take away from your college experience. Now, in fact, this pandemic situation is a good time to kind of rethink this whole thing. बऱ्याच लोकांना मला म्हणजे विचारतात की what was your most biggest takeaway from your college experience in the US किंवा इथे शाळेत असताना का जे काय असेल, आणि it is the interaction with people. It is the social gatherings that you have outside of your classroom that really teach you how to work in a team-based environment, in a company like this, in a job, wherever you are. I think if end of the day you only say ki I know my theory, I can write well in the exam, I get 100 out of 100, it's really worth very little, because when you're sitting in a team setting and you say मला लोकांबरोबर इंटरॅक्ट करता येत नाही, मला माझे पॉईंट्स पुट अक्रॉस करता येत नाहीत, मला एक सिम्पल प्रेझेंटेशन करता येत नाही, तर what is that all worth? What is that degree worth really? So this pandemic situation where you're virtually learning at this point of time, I think it will need to go back to the normal. This cannot be the new normal. We need to go back to the normal of studying in classrooms, studying with peers around us, because we learn the most from them. So whether it is my college experience or whether it is here, I think, or whether any job that I have done, the most benefit is out of working with teams, working with people.
Yes,
So-
sir. I totally agree with it.
Yeah.
I also think that one should always be in a different type of social gatherings,
Exactly.
because he gets many ideas. You know,
Absolutely.
every person's perspective is different.
Totally different.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right, sir. Coming to
Yeah.
the next question.
Yeah.
You've had a very good family reputation, as you have said, because from the both sides as well.
Yeah.
So were you always linked to the precision company? Like you said, you were 2 to 3 years old when
Yeah.
the precision camshaft started. So
Yeah.
were you always in the company? Did you know everything from the start itself?
No, I wouldn't say I knew everything. I was too young to know everything, but I have come and sat here on sandचे ड्यून्स असतात ना, जेव्हा कन्स्ट्रक्शन चालू आहे, येऊन बसलेलो आहे, बघितलंय काय चाललंय, कसं चाललंय. सो इन्क्विजिटिव्ह नेचर कायम आहे लहानपणापासून, आणि लाईक वाय इज दिस, यु नो, हाऊ थिंग्स वर्क. That has always been a thing. But I wouldn't say I have been linked to the company or been associated with everything that is going on here since the very beginning. I think one of the great things is that neither my father nor my mother nor anybody in my family ever forced me to come back here.
Oh.
Never. मला in fact कोणी असं म्हणलं सुद्धा नाही की तू मेकॅनिकल इंजिनिअरिंग शिक, मग MBA कर, मग इकडे परत ये, असं कधीच कोणी म्हणलं नाही.
This was your individual choice.
This was, I think, an individual choice that, like I come back to, is that if I am passionate about something, only then it makes sense in coming back and being part to grow that company. Right? Otherwise, kai nusta see, in fact, my father told me once ki just because you are the son of the owner does not mean you should sit here. Unless you are not educated, unless you are not competent enough. He said very clearly to me, मी जेव्हा US ला first time 18 years असताना गेलो होतो, he said that if you do not do well, if you do not perform well, and if you are not competent, I will hire a CEO who will run the company. We don't need you to run the company. It was very clear. So that kind of has driven me to say ki I have to perform well, I have to do well, get into the best institutions in the world. Neither I knew there was no place here, to be very honest. So the manje typical family setting type of situation navta.
So you had the education till 12th in India.
Yeah.
What made you opt the education after 12th in America or out of country?
Yeah. So basically up to 12th, kind of made up my mind ki engineering karayche. Again, going back to, because I was very curious about things, I was very inquisitive about why do things work the way they do. Originally, if you had asked me the same question when I was in 10th standard, I would have still said that I wanted to be associated with space exploration and being an astronaut. I would still say at that point of time, and I was very keen towards doing that also. Reason is, when we did a lot of research on opportunities available outside, especially in the US, तेव्हा एक डिफरन्स फक्त जो जाणवला is, one was the exposure part of it, right? I had the opportunity where my parents gave me the opportunity to say ki, you know, you can go out and study. It comes at a cost, obviously, etc., but we are giving you this opportunity, so don't let it go. Number one, for the exposure, because at a very early age, you're in a completely different environment which you've never seen for 18 years of your life. You will interact with people who are the smartest in the world from all parts of the world, which you said earlier, right? Ki perspective, everybody has a different thing. इंडियात तर फॉर शुअर वेगळा असला असता, बाहेर गेल्यावर अजून टोटली वेगळा आहे. आणि वेन वी डिड सम रिसर्च ऑन युनिव्हर्सिटीज देअर, द रिझन टू चूज पर्ड्यू फॉर एक्झाम्पल was it's the top 5 in the country in the US for mechanical engineering. It's number 1 in the US for aerospace engineering. So a lot of big dignitaries have come out of that institution. And when we actually went and visited, before I started, we realized that the way things are taught there are very, very different than what I had seen in 2007 here. I'm sure things have changed a lot since 2007 to 2020 here. But at that point of time, what I heard from my seniors at that time was की वर्षभर फारसा काही अभ्यास नाही आहे. 1 महिन्याची PL असते, त्याच्यात तुम्ही रट्टा मारून लिहा पेपर. म्हणजे
ते कसं आहे माहितीये का, ज्या माणसाला जेवढं घ्यायचं ना तो
तेवढंच घेईल. करेक्ट करेक्ट.
आता तुम्हाला केवढं घ्यायचं हे तुमच्या हातात आहे.
ऍब्सोल्युटली.
मी इंजिनिअरिंग केली, मी तर असं नाही केलं.
करेक्ट करेक्ट. ऍब्सोल्युटली.
मी काहीतरी वेगळं केलं आमच्या सिनियर्स पासून.
ऍब्सोल्युटली. आणि आय थिंक over the last 15 years, the syllabus, the way things are taught in India has also tremendously changed. असं नाही आहे की तसंच जसं 2007-8 मध्ये होतं तसं आहे. तिथे मी काय बघितलं की फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल जी फायनल एक्झाम आहे तुमची वर्षाच्या अखेरला, दॅट ओनली काउंट्स फॉर 20% ऑफ युअर ग्रेड. इट डज नॉट काउंट फॉर 100%. US मध्ये फक्त 20%. सो 80% इज एव्हरी होमवर्क दॅट यू टर्न इन, every quiz that you do in class, every midterm exam, every semester end exam, it all counts towards, even attendance in class counts towards your end grade. So तुम्हाला जर A किंवा जे काय ग्रेड पाहिजे असेल त्या क्लासमध्ये, तुम्ही अख्खं वर्ष आराम करा आणि मग एंडला जाऊन परीक्षा द्या, हे होऊच शकत नाही. इवन इफ यू वॉन्ट टू, लाईक यू सेड ना, you'll only and you'll fail. You will fail, and they give you only 2 attempts to fail. If you fail twice, you're out. No questions asked.
Out of the university.
Out, finished. So what you said, right, there are ways, like you said, की मी नाही तसं केलं जसं काही लोकांनी केलं असेल. तिथे तो चॉईसच नाहीये. जर तुम्ही नाही परफॉर्म केलं ऑन अ कन्सिस्टंट बेसिस थ्रू आउट 4 years, you will fail. And there will be no come back to that. So that was one. And the way the practical theories अशी practically शिकवतात. Everything is taught practically. So तुम्ही कोर्स कधी सिव्हिल, यू सेड ट्रसेस वरती आम्ही एक कोर्स केला होता फक्त ऑन स्ट्रक्चर्स वगैरे. सो दे ॲक्च्युली टुक अस टू अ ब्रिज. एक नदी होती तिथे, दे टुक अस टू अ ब्रिज. दे सेड स्केच दिस ब्रिज, do a full theory, do a full analysis of this, of the truss structure on this bridge. If there was an earthquake, what would happen to this bridge, etc., etc. There was an IC engine class where Ford had sponsored part of it actually, where we got a big engine in the class, first day of the semester. Over 1 month, one by one, we took apart the entire engine, entirely, every nut and bolt hatani, and in the next 2 months, we put it all back together. So now if you ask me the smallest detail of where a little gasket goes into an engine, I can tell you की त्या visual memory वरनं मी तुम्हाला perhaps सांगू शकेन. So a lot of these things were very practical oriented, which is the inclination.
So you think that is the biggest difference between our education system and their education system?
I think so, at least.
Practical based learning.
Practical based learning, and whether not just in engineering, in almost everything that you are taught there. You are not, most of the things, I would say 90% of the things that you do, whether it is writing papers, whether it is doing team projects, all at least in a minimum of 4 people. Typically they will put together 4 very different type of people individually. Intentionally they will put together different type of people, and then you have to work in that setting. So that is something that I felt was quite different. And like I said, the other part was the different exposure, having access to, you know, the best labs in the world, the best professors in the world. All of that was obviously a separate.
Okay.
What all preparations did you do, sir, for going there, means taking out of the India?
Yeah, so at that point of time एकच एक्झाम घ्यावी लागते. सो तुम्हाला अंडरग्रॅज्युएटसाठी जायचं असेल टू द US, इट्स SAT म्हणून एक एक्झाम आहे, स्कॉलॅस्टिक ॲप्टिट्यूड टेस्ट, which is basically फक्त मॅथ्स आणि इंग्लिश. Those are the only 2 things that they test, but it's variety of things: reasoning, thinking, writing, reading, comprehension.
So in maths it's basically apti. aptitude.
Yeah, exactly. So these two subjects are there, and it's like a 7-hour exam or so, 6-7 hour exam, which you have to take. Punyat offered us there, and based on the results of that, they give you admission, and obviously they're looking at your 10th standard, 11th standard, and 12th standard results also.
So according to the merit of the SAT, you decide. They decide the
University, yeah.
Okay, then you get to choose.
Exactly. So you take your score and you apply to whichever universities you want to.
Okay.
I only applied to 4. I got into all 4 that I applied to, and I chose 1 out of the 4.
Right.
So that's kind of how.
Sir, now you have told us about your experience in
Yeah.
the US.
Yeah.
Okay, you have done your schooling in India and your higher education in out of India.
Yeah.
If you would have done higher education in India itself, what do you think the impact of the education would have been on you?
How? What is?
In what perspective? Like, if suppose you have worked there,
Yeah.
you have got all the practical knowledge you needed for an mechanical engineer.
Yeah.
If you would have done here, do you think you would be as efficient now as you are?
Hard to say. I mean, it really it's up to me. Like you said, at end of the day, how I wanted to take best use of that degree, best use of that college environment where I was. I think few of the things that have really helped from the American way of education is the way of thinking, the way of being practical, the way of always being black and white rather than a gray area. So those are I don't. If you ask me की तुम्हाला statics आणि dynamics better आला असतं इंडियात किंवा US मध्ये असलं, I would say at par आहे, same आहे. There's no difference, right? Because शेवटी theory आहे. ती तुम्ही वेगळी शिकवणार नाही. Combustion कसं होतं सेम होतं तिथे आणि इथे सेम होतं. I think the only difference is all the softer parts of the education. When I say that की when we had to write a paper, for example, there was no scope of saying की मला असं वाटतं पण हे पण आहे पण हे पण. You have to be clear. You have to be black or white.
It's either A or B.
It is A or B. It is never. Or if it is C, explain why it is C. There is no. It could be A and B, little bit of C. Hey, asa nahi hai. I mean, more so, I think the level of confidence that you build as a very young person going outside so far away and being with different kinds of people is something that I took away a lot. The fact that I can address people very confidently, talk very how do you say, crystal clear about thoughts instead of being tangled. I think these are things that are the big takeaways from the education. I don't think in terms of the theory itself there would be any difference.
Right, sir.
Sir, after engineering, you did MBA, right?
Yeah.
Where did you do? Harvard University.
Yeah.
So, what is the experience there in MBA degree?
Yeah. So, to put it in one sentence, life-changing.
Okay.
That is,
I would say like
yeah.
every engineer, does he have to MBA?
No.
Because
No.
everyone does nowadays.
No.
It is like the cherry on top of a cake. You see?
So I think from a job perspective, what people are typically thinking, and it's a good way to think, it's actually not bad, where as an engineer, you are skilled with all your technical skills, right? And more than just the pure technical skills, you have an analytical mindset. That's what engineering teaches you. End of the day, it only teaches you ki analytically vichar kara, come to a conclusion. And when you go into a typical job and you want to go up the ladder in that job or in that company, people expect you to have managerial skills. People expect you to have rational thinking. People expect you to present well. All of these things which are typically not taught in engineering education, right? Typically. And an MBA does teach you that. So an MBA teaches you things that, for example, you've never learned marketing. Officially, you've never learned marketing. You have never learned finance. You have never learned strategy. All of these things is something that an MBA teaches you, and it is often considered a very, very good combination of an engineer with a managerial degree like an MBA who can then do very well in whether in business of his own, at a company, etc. Because बऱ्याचदा I have seen where engineers, where I've worked in the past, Cummins मध्ये सुद्धा, की at a very senior level also खूप कमी knowledge on finance, on balance sheet, on profit and loss statements, which are so important as you grow up the ladder. You can't just say कि I'm the technical genius on this, but that's limited to that. So it's a good combination to have, but a lot of times. But So coming back to your question, so I think this was life changing in many ways, because it's the mecca of business education, right? It's the greatest institute for business education. And again, I will talk about only 2 or 3 things that kind of distinguish the university than the rest of the business schools. One is an incredibly diverse class. So one classroom has about 90 students at once. We are all sitting in a kind of a auditorium kind of a setting. I would say 20-30% of the students there come from consulting background, 20-30% are bankers, there are lawyers, doctors, engineers, architects, you name it. Army, ex-army people. So many different kind of people sitting in one room. And that's one. The second is the fact that every case or every subject is taught with a case study. Nothing is taught in theory. And I found it actually quite surprising, because when I first heard about the HBS way of teaching, the case study method, and I thought ki तुम्ही marketing शिकू शकाल, strategy शिकू शकाल, की Elon Musk ने हे कसं केलं, किंवा हे, these are all case studies. How will you teach accounting, which is black and white, ledger ठेवणं, हे ठेवणं, how will you teach that using a case study? But I was surprised that they incredibly do it. So what, for example, when they were first teaching us what is simple credit and debit on the balance sheet, त्यांनी आम्हाला त्या क्लासमध्ये ॲपल कंपनीची बॅलन्स शीट दिली आणि त्यांनी म्हटलं स्टडी करा आणि आम्हाला सांगा काय आहे. आणि nobody, except the guys who had done banking before or private equity, none of us knew. And so the professor then goes through each line item on that balance sheet and says, this means this, this means this, this means this. So again, practical that you will not forget it. तुम्हाला फक्त जर theory मध्ये शिकवलं, it's very easy to kind of forget. Now when I have that correlation to a real company, it's very good to remember. I think so that, like I said, the kind of people that were around, the case-based learning, everything is case-based. And the way it works is generally दिवसात 3 classes असतात. So 3 cases. You have to read the full case the day before. म्हणजे तुम्हाला साधारण 60 ते 70 पानं वाचून, 60 ते 70 पानं डेली तुम्हाला वाचून जायचंय, विचार करून जायचंय, नुसतं वाचून जायचं नाहीये. Because typically I'll tell you how it works. The professor only talks for 10% of the class. And he will say, you have read the case, obviously you know काय काय झालंय ह्या कंपनीमध्ये, आणि they get it to a certain level and leave it. And then they say, now you are the CEO of the company. You're sitting in his chair. What are you going to do?
So that gives you decision making.
You have to, you have to think. You have to think ki you're sitting there. You have to think of all the circumstances around that company and then say ki what would you have done? And the perspective that comes from everybody is different, right? There was a company we were talking about going through bankruptcy, for example. And for example, the banker says, "Mala kai ghena na dena, company vikun taka, liquidate the assets, we'll make money, finished." The lawyer who's in the classroom also says, "Are पण तुम्ही हा विचार केलाय का legal system मध्ये हे बसतं का, हे का, ते का?" The engineer says, "No, maybe we can better use the machines to do something else." So many different perspectives which you have not thought of. Typically when you're in engineering, like you said, right, you're only in that same, you're in a bubble. You're in a bubble. And I would say this to anybody. If you're in medical school, you're in that bubble. तुम्ही रोज anatomies बोलणार आहे, तुम्ही रोज surgeries बोलणार आहे, जे काय. But why an MBA and why it is so, it has become so popular with, say, engineers or anybody, is to get this kind of getting out of your comfort zone.
Right.
So, yeah.
That's it. Sir, you talked about Elon Musk. Now, thing is that we as an engineers are not clear about the electrical trend going on.
Yeah.
Because it is neither shifting to any side. You see, it is in the middle, and some of them are opting. We in CAGR itself have prepared both the vehicles.
Yep.
We have done mechanical as well as electrical. Because we are not absolutely known like where the trend is going to go. So what do you think about that? Where will it go?
No, I think electrification will happen at some point of time of vehicles, but it's not going to happen overnight. Okay. It is not like smartphones जेव्हा आले होते, तुमचे जुने नोकिया गेले, नवीन स्मार्टफोन आले. It was a quick switch, right?
Yes.
Because everything, all the infrastructure exists for that change to happen so quickly. Mm-hmm. In terms of electric vehicles, there are challenges that are so big and so enormous that it's not going to happen overnight. What we think as a company here, with all the research that we do, with all the customer connect that we have, with all the OEMs around the world, We think that for it to become EVs to become say 15% part of the total cars will be about 2030. 15% of the total cars would be electric by 2030. And then even after that, we at least don't think that there is any scenario where electric is full and there is no more IC engines in vehicles. We don't think there is a scenario like this. Our honorable transport minister at one point have also said that there is going to be a balance, an equilibrium between these two type of technologies, because one has inherent challenges that we do not realize at this point of time. Challenges in terms of infrastructure. आज आपल्याला घरी असताना लोड शेडिंग आपण अजून सुद्धा बोलतो. हे असताना तुम्ही इलेक्ट्रिक व्हेकल्स कसे चार्ज करणार आहे? तुमच्याकडे इन्फ्रास्ट्रक्चर आहे का हे चार्जिंगसाठी इंडियात? आज काहीच नाही आहे. आपण बोलतोय की 2020, 2030 ऑल इलेक्ट्रिक. वेअर इज द इन्फ्रास्ट्रक्चर? Do we have trained service professionals throughout our country who can service an electric vehicle? There is somebody, we read an interview of a big industrialist a few months ago where he said, do you have any idea that the high voltage systems in an electric vehicle, if an untrained person touches it, that person will become ash. काही राहणार पण नाही त्या माणसाचं. Are we trained for that? Most importantly, we have to not forget the fact that in an electric vehicle you use lithium and cobalt and all of these, again, finite resources. These are not infinite resources. Just like fossil fuels, these are finite resources which we are using at this point of time from different parts of the world. How much pollution it is causing at the place where these batteries are built, nobody is talking about. Today, आज काय होतंय, तुमची गाडी जी आहे तिथून पोल्युशन बाहेर येत नाही. इट्स झिरो इमिशन. बट जिथे ती बॅटरी बनतीये किंवा जिथे ते सिस्टम्स बनतायत तिथे has anybody spoken about that? No. What is happening today is that's a displaced pollution. Today, when you drive a diesel car, you yourself know कि मी pollution generate करतोय, whereas in an electric car, you don't feel it, but somebody else is doing it 300 kilometers away from you. You just don't know it. So all of these challenges are there. However, like coming back to my first sentence, I think it is inevitable that electrification will happen in the next 15, 20, 30 years, gradually, fast, however it is. And I think as a company, we took a very conscious call 2 years ago that we want to be part of this. We have to be part of this. Otherwise, we don't want to be in a situation 10 years from now where we say, oh, हे सगळं बदललं का landscape, आता आपण काय करायचं? So that's not what we wanted to do. So just quickly touching on that, what we did was, आता Camshaft, for example, is one component of the IC engine. When we looked at electric vehicles, we said that instead of doing a component or a sub part of the system, we want to acquire a company that does the end-to-end solution. So our company EMOS काय करते की तुम्ही तुमची डिझेल किंवा पेट्रोल ट्रक किंवा बस किंवा कमर्शियल व्हेकल आमच्याकडे आणायची आणि within 6 to 8 weeks we converted to electric, fully electric. We are also working with OEMs now to provide them the technology and they do the assembly themselves. So we have gone from being really just a component provider in the EV space to a real solution provider. That's what we wanted to do.
Sir, as you are eligible now to come to your renowned precision company, so what means you are executive director right now.
Mm-hmm.
So were you something else before this post or directly the executive director?
I wish. No. So when I first started, actually, if I go one step back also, मी जेव्हा पर्ड्यूत होतो, शिकत होतो, I would come back here in the summer आणि मी मशीनवर सुद्धा काम केलेलं आहे. 1 महिना 2 महिना ॲक्च्युली मशीनिंग केलेलं आहे. त्याच्यानंतर when we went public, आमच्या IPOचा पार्ट होतो, that was also during a summer. When I came back eventually after my MBA, the first role was as business development executive, म्हणजे just a business development role, where basically customer जो आहे आमचा PCLचा, त्याला सस्टेन करणं, त्याच्याबरोबर रिलेशनशिप्स बेटर बिल्ड करणं, बिझनेस वाढवणं, अँड ऑफकोर्स लुकिंग ॲट मोर बिझनेस बिसाइड्स द वन्स दॅट वी ऑलरेडी हॅव. So looking at new customers, new technologies, new products was the initial role. During that time also the role was ki besides PCL now, just this Camshaft business, let us look at opportunities to acquire companies. So kind of an M&A, mergers and acquisitions type of role hota to, where that was, I think, one of the most fun parts of the role at that time, because we went out and we started searching for companies that would fit our criteria. टिपिकली कसं होतं की जेव्हा कंपनी अक्वायर करायची आहे एक लिस्ट येते बँकेकडनं किंवा इन्व्हेस्टमेंट बँककडनं आणि ते हे बघा हे सगळे कंपनी सेलवर आहेत कुठली पाहिजे तुम्हाला. सो आर लॉजिक वॉज अ लिटल बिट डिफरंट. वी सेड हे नको आहे आम्हाला असं नको आहे. आर क्रायटेरिया इज दिस. We want machined components, we want high-end components, we want critical, we want good customers, we want positive EBITDA, we want profitable companies, we want the managements of those old companies to carry over for 1 year at least. So it's a long list. And many a times our partners said ki tumcha wish list hai fakt hai asa khara hu shakat nahi. But we pushed them and pushed, and we finally got 3 companies back to back: Memco in Nashik, MFT in Germany, EMOS in Netherlands, which we acquired in a period of basically 8 months, which was really very challenging for the entire team here, including our accounts and finance team, our legal team. Sagyanni had 3 companies back to back acquire karna was quite a challenge. So that was the initial part of the role. I think how this role has really now developed or changed a little bit is इन हाइंडसाइट आता काय वाटतंय की जे कंपनी अक्वायर केले आणि ती जी प्रोसेस होती द डॉक्युमेंटेशन ड्यू डिलिजन्स लीगल वर्क व्हॅल्युएशन्स हे सगळं नाव सीम्स लाईक इट वॉज द इझिएस्ट पार्ट. तेव्हा वाटत होतं की दिस इज क्वाईट अ इंटेग्रल पार्ट ऑफ दिस. नाव इट सीम्स लाईक इट वॉज द इझिएस्ट पार्ट बिकॉज आता काय झालंय नाव वी ओन ऑल 3 कंपनीज. वी हॅव नो लॉंगर एनीबडी टू से की ही तुमची कंपनी आहे तुम्ही चालवा तुम्ही आम्हाला हे रिझल्ट्स आणून द्या किंवा तुम्ही आमच्यासाठी ही कंपनी डेव्हलप करा. नाव ऑल देअर प्रॉब्लेम्स आर आर प्रॉब्लेम्स. वी कांट से की अरे ते मेमकोमध्ये त्यांनी असं 10 वर्षांपूर्वी काहीतरी केलं होतं त्यामुळे आज काय बोलण्यात फायदाच नाही आहे. टुडे ऑल 3 कंपनीज आर 100% ओन्ड बाय PCL. They used to be 76, 51, that's all done. It's all 100% owned by PCL now. And everything that happens there, we are fully responsible for. Whether it is the new technologies that we develop, the new products that we do, the new customers that we focus on, or the people there, the management teams there that we have now assigned, he sagre are part of our responsibility now. So, and as for me, as a member of the board here at PCL now, that becomes a very important responsibility going forward.
Right.
So
When you talk about other businesses,
Yeah.
I actually read about your wife,
Yeah.
Mayura Shah.
Yeah.
She also has a business. And one more thing, sir. I have 2 questions here.
Yeah.
One is about your wife, and second is I have in our syllabus, like this is basically about TDP, right? So in our syllabus, there is a point where we get to know that establishing business in India is far more difficult than establishing businesses in other
is.
places, like other than India.
Yeah.
The legal procedures you say, or
It is.
yes, is it so?
It is, for sure. I mean, we see it that the metric that you typically see is ease of doing business, right? At one point we were under 100. I think ata in the last 4-5 years that number seems to have increased. To give you a simple example, to form a company, to form a legal procedure बोलता है म्हणून मी सांगतो. My wife has formed a company also outside of India to conduct part of her business. The company is based in Singapore right now. We formed the company totally online, virtually, in a period of 12 hours. Everything. एंड टू एंड. म्हणजे मी ॲप्लिकेशन केलं त्याचे पैसे भरले त्याला कोण तिथला लोकल डिरेक्टर एक लागतो तिथला त्यांनीच अपॉइंट केला. आम्ही एक इथला लोकल डिरेक्टर आहे त्यात जे काय मनी हॅज टू बी इन्फ्युज्ड एज स्टार्टअप कॅपिटल और पेड अप कॅपिटल वॉज इन्फ्युज्ड all within 12 hours. At the end of the day, we had the certificate of incorporation done.
If that would have been India, how much time
I would think 15 days to a month.
That is almost
Certainly. And the amount of I mean, see, I think we are getting better than we were, say, 20 years ago. But we are still far behind what the Western world or the more developed world can do. Progressive and advancing nature ahe, but still, I think it's a difficult process. End of the day, I think, Atta, since you asked about Mayura's company, we are trying to raise funds also, like external funds from venture capital or from angel investors or things like that. And when we are talking to investors outside of India, the first question they ask is, I hope your company is incorporated in Europe or in the US or in Singapore or countries where all of these transactions can be done very easily. So, hai challenge hai.
Right, sir.
Sir, what all things are necessary to build an entrepreneurship skills.
Skills.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the last time I was at your college, I spoke about some of these things. So I'll maybe repeat part of that.
You can just give us the crux.
Yeah.
You see?
I will always come back to that same point that if you are passionate about your project, if you're passionate about what you do, only then try to become an entrepreneur. That's one. Second thing is finding gaps, right? I think that is the art of an entrepreneur. I'll give you several examples, but instead of giving several, I'll start with PCL itself. When my father started this company, India एकच अजून camshaft manufacturer होता, who would say की घ्यायचे घ्या नाहीतर जा. आणि so the option to the customer was की import करावे लागायचे camshaft back in 1990s. So when my father looked at this opportunity, he is not an engineer. He is not a technical person. But he said he opportunity आहे मार्केटमध्ये because nobody else is doing it. Is a highly critical product, value added product, important for the engine and the customer. It's not a run of the mill काहीतरी product नहीं है, which we should get into because there's nobody else in the market right now doing it. That was the art of finding the opportunity. I think a lot of today's examples you will see are exactly that. Why did an Ola do so well in India? Because Uber was not there. It was a proven model in the US. It worked great. Let's replicate it here. There are and plenty of examples like that, right? So I think when you look at entrepreneurship, I don't always suggest that you look at global problems to solve or national problems to solve. They can be local problems also. For example, a lot of times you will ask me, ki city of Solapur मध्ये काय entrepreneurship म्हणून करावं? I think in a city like ours, which is not saturated, which is not highly mature, fully saturated नहीं है, like Mumbai for example, opportunity इथेच आहे. And if you say, I don't want to do it and I will rather go and work somewhere in Pune, somebody else will do it here. Because the gap needs to be filled. I think there was a... आता जे स्विगी आणि झोमॅटो आपण बोलतो, there was a Solapur based startup that was doing these delivery of food services before Swiggy and Zomato came, and it was, I think, acquired by one of the big ones or something like that. So somebody locally did it. So these opportunities do exist. And if you say, I think I'm diverging a little bit, but since the question is along that, ki can Solapurat राहून हे करू शकतो का? Being an entrepreneur, I think if you really have the, coming back to what skills, if you really have the hard working abilities, the ability to kind of drive it home when you've started something, it is possible. So if you look at what my wife is doing right now, she doesn't buy anything from Solapur or sell anything in Solapur. Market pan nahi hai and source pan nahi hai. If you look at her operations, she is sourcing leather from Europe. The manufacturing happens in Chennai. The design happens in New York. She's selling in London. So it's totally global, but all controlled from here. It can be done. If you want to do it, if you really, म्हणजे काय जिद्द असेल तर होऊ शकतं. And then end of the day, we can find reasons to say की इथे बसून होत नाही, असंच आहे, तसंच आहे. If we can say that the best of the cars in the world are driven by technology that comes out of Solapur, we have nothing to blame. We should not have anything to blame. So,
right, sir. I totally agree with you. Now, speaking about entrepreneurship, we have got this program, I think, because of the revised syllabus. As you said, there have been many developments since your education from 2007. Many things are going to be added soon. But what do you think more should be added so as to develop these skills? I mean, what I notice in our generation that soft skills are basically lacking in the engineers. Mostly engineers. Okay, we are very strong in technical field, but we are very weak in soft skills. What do you think should be done about this?
No, I'm actually very happy to see programs like this is called TEDP, right? I'm actually very happy to see programs like this at engineering colleges in India, which I know did not exist 10-15 years ago. So this is a great starting point for you to say ki let's start building your personality in a way which is different than, so this is all at the end of the day building your personality, right? Making you think about business, making you think about soft skills is all helping you shape up your confidence level, your way of talking, etc. So I think it's a great first step. In addition to this, what could be added to engineers is, it might be part of this program, but is finance skills for sure, which typically you're not taught. I don't know if it is part of this program or not, but if it's not, I would urge your college's management to kind of think about this, because as you go into the real world, as you step out of this role, you will be questioned. Typically, you will not be questioned on the technical part of it. Up to a certain stage in your career, yes, at a junior level. As you progress, people are going to ask you, तू हे सगळं करतोयस, त्याचा ROI काय आहे? When you're investing money, what is the return on my investment? How much is the IRR, the internal rate of return going to be? What is the payback period? All of these things are going to come into your... so, for example, anything that we do here, we always ask, ki, what is the rupee amount saved because of this? तुम्ही जर कधी प्लांटमध्ये जाऊन बघितलं, everything is converted into rupees. Everything. What happened at many years ago, when my father used to have meetings with his colleagues, somebody would say, engineers, right, typically, somebody would say, sir, 10,000 ppm rejection झालं. Okay, ठीक आहे. Somebody says की water wastage झालं आहे किंवा oil wastage झालं आहे, इतके liter झालं. Somebody says इतका kilo scrap झाला. So all different metrics, right? And so what my father at that time said की आपण काय बोलतोय कुणालाच कळत नाही. You talk about liters per minute, you talk about ppm, you talk about this. What does it all mean? It all should boil down to rupees. The company pays you in rupees as salary. Please explain to me की तुम्ही जे काही नुकसान केलंय तो rupees मध्ये समजावून सांगा, किंवा जे काही फायदा केलाय तो पण rupees मध्ये समजावून सांगा. So now on the board, if you go in anywhere in our plant, you will see की एक mold आहे, for example, sandचा mold आहे. त्याच्यावरती लिहिलेलं आहे की जर as the worker you drop this mold and you break it, if it is a rejection, every mold broken will cost you 130 rupees to the company. It has been brought down to that की ती सँडची कॉस्ट, त्याला बनवण्याची कॉस्ट, etc. मिळून 130 रुपये होते. But to that finest detail, it is put in financial terms. Unless that, a business can't run. You can't run on other technical metrics, right? So that is, I think, a skill that as engineers we need to learn. Ki how to, yes, your job is technical. It's necessary that you do it like that. But when you talk to management, or when you talk to say the higher ups in the organization, you need to be able to convert it into financial metrics, because that's all that matters.
Yes, so this is a very valuable suggestion.
Yeah.
And even though we do not have in it our syllabus,
Yeah.
but I think if I suggest this to our principal and our this one faculty,
Yeah.
they'll surely
Yeah.
ensure that this will be taught in our classrooms.
Because a lot of things like we read a lot of things in the news की आजकाल आपण आता सिन्स स्टार्टअप्स आणि ऑन्टरप्रिनरशिप बद्दल बोलतोय, वी ऑफन टॉक अबाउट दीज युनिकॉर्न व्हॅल्युएशन्स अँड $1 billion व्हॅल्युएशन्स अँड काय ऑल ऑफ दीज बिग थिंग्स दॅट वी टॉक अबाउट. आय थिंक एज engineers at some point we need to be curious की हे कुठून आले नंबर्स, हे कोण पैसे देते, हे किती बर्न होत आहेत पैसे, हे खरं प्रॉफिट बनवते का अशीच कंपनीला वाढवत चाललोय आपण. वाय इज अ कंपनी दॅट हॅज, फॉर एक्झाम्पल, नो ॲसेट्स, no nothing as part of the balance sheet, but yet is valued at 20,000 crore rupees? Why? I think these are certain, there are companies like this, right? Plenty of companies. So I think a question for engineers to ask is for sure ki, see, one of these days when you are part of this entrepreneurship program, you might want to invent something, or you might want to come up with a new app for something, or you might want to come up with a new idea. How do you take it to investors? How do you pitch it to investors? How much money do you need to really make this business large? Right. All of these things need to be part of some part of your, I'm not saying it needs to be, because that would be like doing an MBA if that is the only thing that you did. But it needs to be some part of your education.
So your wife is also a businesswoman. She have started the brand Mayu. What is the role? What is your role in that?
So my role is a very supportive role, to be very honest. I am on paper the part-time CFO of the company. But what I do is I try to help her with basically capital planning. So to grow the company, you need money, obviously. How do we raise the money? How do we properly budget what we are wanting to do for the next years? How do we reach out to investors? All of these things, or like balance sheet, P&L type of work is what I'm helping her with. But my role is very restricted. It's a very supportive role. She is the heart and brain of that company. She does it all by herself. She has now about 5 to 6 people in her team totally. सोलापुरात 2 आणि मग रेस्ट ऑफ द वर्ल्ड मध्ये अजून 3 जण आहेत. आय थिंक शी इज while she's an engineer, I think she's very, very creative. That was her inclination since the very beginning, more than very technical, very creative. So, आम्ही एकदा युरोपमध्ये एका बऱ्याच फ्रेंड्स बरोबर ट्रिपला गेलो होतो while doing our MBA. आणि on one such trip, Mayura went into a museum and found a very, very different material. That looked very, very much like leather, but it was different. म्हणजे जे एक्झॉटिक स्किन्स आपण बोलतो ना, किंवा क्रॉकोडाईल किंवा ऑस्ट्रिच असं दिसत होतं, पण वेगळं होतं काहीतरी. फॉर शुअर इट वॉज नॉट दॅट टाईप ऑफ मटेरियल. अँड वेन शी रिसर्च इट अ लिटल बिट मोर, शी रिअलाइज दॅट दिस कंट्री, आइसलँड जिथे होतं हे आम्ही होतो, तिथे इट्स अ स्मॉल आयलंड. Lot of fishing happens there for consumption, right? By people, it's exported all over the world. And when you consume fish, you don't eat the skin. It's thrown away, discarded, absolute waste. Kahi hot nahi tha. So some company there in Iceland thought, ki why don't we use this skin to make leather out of it? So the idea therefore came that to make leather out of fish skin, which was only done by 2 or 3 companies in the world. So she was so fascinated by this idea because her whole thing was कि एक तरह leather है, it is more durable because it's of the fish skin, and it looks and feels very different. It's not like your typical leather. So she said her first idea was कि being the engineer that she is trained, she said कि why don't we make this material in India? And so she found a scientist in Calcutta, partnered with him. कॅलकटामध्ये खूप टॅनिंग इंडस्ट्री खूप आहे ॲक्च्युली, आणि लखनौ, कॅलकटा, कानपूर वगैरे. तर तिथे त्यांनी मग फिश जिथे फिशिंग करतात आणि डिस्किनिंग करतात, तिथून त्यांनी फिशची स्किन आणून त्याला ट्रीट करून त्याचं सॅमन स्किन बनवलं सुद्धा इंडियात. बट what she learned, so I think this is one of the things that as entrepreneurs we need to know of, how to iterate and how to quickly pivot, not stay focused too much on one thing. So what she said was, the quality of this skin that is coming out, the leather, is not at par with the European one. It's just not as good enough because the size of the fish is smaller. So Manun, that's one. And the second, more important to her, was ki the kind of conditions that are there in leather tanneries in India, the less that I say about it, it is better. It is so unhygienic, very, very polluting. It is really, really bad. I have been there myself, and you don't want to even go near that factory. Asa ahe kahi thikani. So keeping in mind that she said, I don't want to be involved in a process like this. And then quickly she decided to pivot and said ki मी material बनवून कोणाला तरी विकण्यापेक्षा, why don't I use the creative side in me to make products out of this? So what she now does is she designs the product, and she has a technical designer in New York जे त्याला like professional sketching करते, आणि मग ते मटेरियल इम्पोर्ट होतं युरोपहून. चेन्नईमध्ये एका झिरो वेस्ट फॅसिलिटीमध्ये मॅन्युफॅक्चर होतं, आणि देन इट इज शिप्ड अराउंड द वर्ल्ड टू कस्टमर्स. So that's where the whole idea came about. That's where I think what she has now done, she also has an MBA in entrepreneurship, actually specifically in entrepreneurship. So she basically, what she has done now really in this business is combined her creative inclination to her technical skills and her entrepreneurship education. It's all kind of put together. So yeah.
I wish I could do something like it.
I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can. Right. So, and it's really like thinking about the end result. You can't give up halfway. Choice nahi hai tumhara. And especially when you are putting together a lot of resources from the outside, and you want to make sure that you deliver on those promises, right? So I think that's it.
Sir, in your previous interview, I have seen that you have talked about a term specifically, young think team.
Yeah.
Young think team. So can you tell me more about that? How
Yeah.
would you like to develop it and all?
So yeah, what we are planning to do, started that process about a year ago, but has been obviously a little bit disturbed because of this pandemic situation. What we are planning to do is put together a young think tank, is what we want to call it, of talented young engineers from colleges in Solapur or perhaps outside also. One is to get fresh minds into the company. To challenge or to question the way things are done over here, which have been doing for 15-20 years. Yes, improving along the way, but somebody to really come and shake up the process and the system, or at least to go and say to make it more robust. I think that is more important. Ki je system and processes आहेत तुमचे manufacturing मध्ये, can they be made more robust? Second thing is for these people to come in and develop new products within our existing infrastructure. To give you an example, we have a foundry setup of 4 foundries and we have a machining setup for machining camshafts. But besides a few machines that are extremely camshaft specific, a lot of these machines, and of course the foundry is very fungible. You can use it for different products. So we want people to come here and to suggest and to think about ways to manufacture different products. We have already started doing it internally, where we are going into balancing shafts and we're going into differential housings and all kinds of parts which can be manufactured here. But we want a young team to kind of think about these processes. And the third is we are working towards an e-mobility or electric vehicle in India. At this point of time, we have a team of only 2 or 3 people in India who are working directly with me to develop a fully electric bus for the Indian market. And this, we are actually hoping to launch the vehicle by the end of this year. It has been in the process for the last year or so, and we are hoping to launch it. As and how we launch the vehicle, I think we are going to be the first in the country to work in this specific sector of electric vehicles. And once this is out there, I think when there is more demand, we are looking to add more team members to this team. These are going to be all in the engineering as well as the sales and marketing kind of field. So that's so the reason to build this think tank is to kind of address these three areas of focus.
Okay, sir.
So
now, what all skills do you need in that individual so as you can recruit him? Yeah, so I have said this in previous interviews also, and I'll say it now, that we do not require you to have very specific skills on anything, really. Anything that is to do with manufacturing, anything that is to do with camshafts, we are here to teach you that when you are onboarded. That's our responsibility for 3 to 6 months to kind of handhold you and to get you up to a certain level. However, we expect you to know all the basic technical knowledge that you need. If you say, मला grindingच काय माहित नाही, मला फाउंड्री म्हणजे काय, मोल्टन मेटल म्हणजे काय माहिती नाही, those are typical engineering skills that we expect you to know. So that and the softer side is far more important here. As a very junior engineer who's only on the plant floor, say, we don't expect you to present. We don't expect you to have good soft skills. We expect you to do the job of machining every day properly. Quality assure kara, stability assure kara, operations, that's it. But when you're part of a think tank, we don't expect you to sit and machine parts, right? We expect you to think differently. We expect you to challenge the norm. And you have to be able to present that in a really very effective way to the management of the company, to outside stakeholders who might be involved. We are a public listed company. There are outside investors who are involved. You have to have the ability to make a point, hold on to that point, and show and present it in a very proper way. That is what we expect you to know. So we are looking for those type of people who are willing to really take that additional effort just beyond your technical knowledge. For the EV application, sure, there is certain specific skills that we would require, and that I guess we can discuss later, but whether it's mechatronics or whether it is high voltage applications or whether it is CAN bus type of applications that you need to know for you to be a part of this team. But as part of the overall think tank, no, I think you need to have a strong engineering foundation, but the ability to present, to think out of the box, that's, I think, the most important thing. Sir, what you have done is actually you have defined the problem.
Yeah.
Like you have told us that you should have a strong engineering base,
yeah,
and then you should also have some soft skills.
Yeah.
Now, I think this is the problem we do not have,
yeah,
right? We do not have soft skills.
Yeah.
What would you like to do so as you can increase soft skills? Like, can you do a course between you and our college or any other college? Like, if you have any problems, you see,
yeah,
I think every problem is
sure
solved from your team.
Sure.
But can you give those problems to our students?
Absolutely.
So as they can,
think out of box.
yes,
yeah,
and give you some solutions that might increase
yeah,
their thinking abilities.
Yeah. So I'll give you a couple of examples of what we can do together, right? I think one is a case-based approach जे आपण बोलत आलोय आत्तापर्यंत. what would be really interesting for at least me or our team to understand how students think in your college or other colleges is to give you a real case study of what I have experienced in the past, give you 2 days to kind of study it in detail, understand, and the case study is open-ended, right? It leaves at a certain stage and you have to think after that. And at this point, we can't meet in person as the full class, but we can have a Zoom call or something like that, where all of, at least say 30, 40 students are involved. And each one presents their view on this case. And then I will ask you specific pointed questions on why did you think in a specific way? Why did you take this decision? Did you think of the repercussions or the implications of your decision? So I will challenge you in ways that you might not have thought about the implications of your decision, but that's, I think, one way to kind of start. The other way, from a very technical point of view, I think we can do is as we are developing new products in this company now, we just started productionizing assembled camshafts, which is totally different product, totally different technology than what we typically use. तिथे casting बनवून machining नाहीच आहे. The process is एका tube वरती तुम्ही cams assemble करताय आणि त्याला machine hollow camshaft, right? So that process is now productionized. It's into manufacturing now, and we use a very specific German technology to do it. For just in short, the tube is there. You have a cam on top which has to be fitted. We heat the cam to say 250 degrees so that there is the ID of the cam expands by about 10 microns. You slide it, and then you cool it, and it contracts back and it's stuck. You don't need any knurling, any welding, nothing. It's just heat and shrink. That's the technology that we use. Now, are there other ways to do this? Are there other more cost-efficient ways to do this that students like you can think of, can develop? Great, we would love to hear these things. So maybe a project can be, we'll give you a problem statement की ही ट्यूब आहे, ह्याच्यावरती हे कॅम्स तुम्हाला जोडायचे. कसं जोडता सांगा. And we'll obviously tell you the end result, right? The end result is we want a certain torque to turn ratio. It has to be at least say 400 Newton meters, whatever it is. So the end result or the end criteria will give you, and we'll give you the base parts. You have to come up with ways to say ki how can we best assemble this. Right. So that can be a way to work together. Yeah.
I think I've learned much from you, sir, today. And,
no, I don't.
Yes.
No, sir, this was very interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I wish we would have more interactions.
Sure.
And I would like to conclude the meeting, sir. Any last suggestions for the young generation?
No, I think
like to give.
I've said this before. I'll say it again. I think it's very, very heartening to see. Very good to see students like you who are taking great initiative, who are coming to industries like us and trying to learn a little bit outside of your theory and outside of your curriculum. I think continue to do that, not just with precision but with other industries around. More importantly, I think it is very good that you're taking this. You are being a part of this entrepreneurship program, because I think this is the way forward. Our country is very much at a kind of turning point when it comes to such new businesses coming out. In the past, a lot of Western businesses have been emulated by Indian companies, whereas I think it's now, there is time for us to kind of become our own creative new companies coming out of India to create our own mark. And I think it's only going to come out of students like you, colleges like where you come from. So I think I keep saying that continue to do what you're doing and do more. So yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much.